Meteorologist Jeremy Graham's at the Severe Storms Forecast Center. While protesters demand it and several states are making plans to reopen some businesses, Dr. Anthony Fauci of the Coronavirus Task Force is urging caution.
The program is not one that is going to be turn the lights on in America. We've finished. We're not. We have to proceed in a very careful, measured way.
President Trump says he disagrees with Georgia's Governor Brian Kemp and his plan to reopen some non-essential businesses Friday, but he says it's the governor's call. California's Governor Gavin Newsom has relaxed his stay-at-home order to let hospitals resume elective surgeries, a move that will send many thousands of idle healthcare workers back to their jobs. The president revealing he has signed the executive order temporarily halting immigration.
It's a very powerful order. It's for 60 days. At the end of 60 days, or maybe even during 60 days, I'll extend it or not, and I'll maybe change it. I might modify it.
The House will meet Thursday to debate and vote on a bill to put more money into the payroll protection program and to approve the creation of a select House committee to study the government's response to the pandemic. America is listening to Fox News.
As we stand up to coronavirus by standing back with social distancing, Bank Pacific reminds you that you can come to the bank without going to the bank. Use many of our other delivery platforms like online banking at bankpacific.com, accessing cash at our ATMs, shopping with our debit cards. For businesses, we have secure cash and check drop windows, and we are employing a new smarter mobile app with remote deposit capture in the next few weeks. We're all in this together, and together we will win. Bank Pacific. Brothers but branches, we place roots. Member FDIC.
During this time of great uncertainty, Security Title is working to support our essential banks. We are working for the family who would have been homeless if their purchase was delayed, for the families refinancing to lower mortgage payments, for the contractor who has fronted the cost to build a home, and the surveyors, appraisers, inspectors, and the realtors who cannot make a living without selling a house. With our office doors locked and our essential team members complying with all government protocols, in our own small way, Security Title continues to serve our community.
You've heard the reports of police departments using drones to remind people to maintain social distancing. Soon, agencies could be using the same technology to check your health from above.
Using virus-detecting software to recognize fever, coughing, and heart rate while keeping officers out of harm's way. Dragonfly's pandemic drone is reportedly effective from up to 190 feet away, but it's raising privacy concerns, including what happens to the data after it's collected and how the drones will be used once the danger from COVID-19 has passed. In a statement, the ACLU says towns in the state should be wary of self-interested, privacy-invading companies using COVID-19 as a chance to market their products and create future business opportunities.
Fox's Rick Leventhal, the country's largest pork processing plant, closing because of the coronavirus.
Tyson Foods' Waterloo, Iowa plant has already been working at reduced capacity and now suspending operations at the pork plant of some 2,800 workers. The company blaming the combination of worker absenteeism with dozens of coronavirus infections and community concerns. Virus cases have also prompted Smithfield Foods, the world's largest pork processor, to shut down plants in Missouri, South Dakota, and Wisconsin. Cargill and National Beef have also reported infections among employees at plants in southwest Kansas, prompting an influx of federal tests and safety equipment to counties in that region. Jeff Manasso, Fox News.
A federal judge has thrown out a lawsuit that had been filed by actor Jussie Smollett, who had claimed malicious prosecution by the city of Chicago and several of its police officers after the department's investigation concluded he had faked what Smollett said was a hate crime committed against him. Smollett has been indicted on several charges, including lying to police. I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Cocoa Coffee Company mugs are now here. Show pride for your island as you enjoy your delicious Circle K coffee. Each generously sized 16-ounce mug is etched with Guam-inspired images like Chief Gadao, Serena, Two Lovers, and many more. The Cocoa Coffee Company mug collection is available for a limited time only, so don't miss out. Get yours today and collect them all. Exclusively available at Circle K locations. A portion of the proceeds go toward the Cocoa Bird Recovery Program.
Everyone has a busy schedule these days, and sometimes we forget to schedule our routine dental checkup and cleaning. Don't neglect your dental health. Schedule one today with Dr. Robert Yang and his Smile team. conveniently located at the East West Business Center on Marine Drive, Upper Tumon. Call us today at 647-8702 or 3. Again, that's 647-8702 or 647-8703. We make smiles happen.
If you've ever struggled for breath, you know what a scary experience it is. Whether you have asthma, emphysema, COPD, lung cancer, or another respiratory illness, the right medical treatment makes all the difference. GRMC's Pulmonology Clinic has the latest technology and respiratory equipment, staffed by world-class pulmonologists. Make an appointment today with GRMC's Pulmonology Clinic and start breathing easier. GRMC, where patients are partners.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific, banking on the Pacific for 65 years.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed, Real Joe Cruz. Chee-hoo. Something that I think you've probably heard me say before, correct?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, it's something you're going to hear me say again. Every day, start the program with a respectful recitation of the Second Amendment to the United States Constitution, getting the program off to a really good start, talking about freedom and the United States Constitution. It's one of the bedrocks of the Tall Tales shtick, as it were. And in that context, you'll find analysis of politics, economics, history on both the local and national setting, journalism also, of course, primarily on the local setting. And to get the program off to a roaring start, we'll start out with Zemi Ikotny. Zemi Ikotny, my backwards bilingual play on words that means Meet the Press. And as I point out occasionally, our Meet the Press is better than the Meet the Press that you'll see on NBC on Sundays. That's the big difference between the two Meet the Presses. As usual, I start out by slamming the Daily News for not running local editorials. Today, it's... the title is use tech to keep virus away. As the United States eases out of painful job-killing phase of social distancing and sheltering at home, preventing the new coronavirus. Whoa, I almost did it. On Tall Tales, we don't talk about the coronavirus or COVID-19. We call things what they really are. So the virus that has plagued us all is referred to on Tall Tales as the Wuhan virus. So if you're stuck on the COVID-19 or coronavirus, it's permissible. I suppose it's actually not permissible, it's excusable. But the nomenclature on Tall Tales is Wuhan virus. So right off the bat, the first sentence, they use the wrong term. So that's enough for the Daily News today. They could write local, or they ought to write editorials about things that are going on right here on our island. But what they do instead is they run boilerplate from Gannett News Service and USA Today, put it on their opinion page as though it were a local editorial. Moving right along to the Post, and this is what the Post says today. Flattened curve claim overlooks decreased limited Wuhan virus testing. A PowerPoint presentation released to Guam's community on Wednesday during the governor's latest press briefing proclaims some progress in the fight against the spread of the Wuhan virus. We have significantly flattened the curve with our efforts, states the assessment, which was attributed to Dr. Michael Cruz, Guam's state surgeon, who is also the president and chief executive officer of Guam Regional Medical City, a government of Guam contracted facility. The assessment then cautions that the numbers are not completely flat. Thus, a surge still looms in the distance. GovGuam has warned a peak in Wuhan virus cases could occur in September or October. It's not expected to be as dire as the previously stated possible peak of 700 deaths or more a few months from now. The presentation released Wednesday no longer provided an estimate on the number of deaths. Albeit now a much slower surge than previous projections, the threat to overwhelm our hospital system could still occur in the fall, Cruz's assessment further states. What's missing in the, quote, significantly flattened curve statement is an acknowledgement that there have been days when the Department of Public Health and Social Services tested nearly a third of the number of tests performed in prior weeks. So let me see if I got this right. If you perform fewer tests, you're going to come up with fewer positive results. Does that sound right, Real Joe Cruz?
Well, sir, I am the math guy around here.
Yeah.
Makes total sense.
Yeah, I suppose you could probably set that up in some kind of a formula, right, where X equals the number of tests and
yes, sir.
And Y equals the number of positives, and you'd have to put a square root and the pi sign in there somewhere to make it come out right. But
you're right.
I'm sure you could do it, right?
I could, sir.
Yeah.
It's possible.
Yeah. Well, you are, after all, the real Joe Cruz. Okay, so what is missing in the significantly flattened curve statement is an acknowledgement that there have been days when the Department of Public Health and Social Services tested nearly just a third of the number of tests performed in prior weeks. So you see the curve going down. As we test fewer people, there are fewer positives. Yeah. Last Sunday, Public Health tested just 9 individuals. Well, I'm not the math whiz you are, Real Joe Cruz, but I will tell you this. The chances of coming up with 10 positive results on Saturday, somewhere between slim and none, if you only test 9 people. Correct?
Yes, sir. Correct.
I'm catching on.
You are.
I'm getting a handle on it, yeah. This significantly flattened curve is being presented after many people have been turned down from testing because of the local government's previously restrictive criteria. The prior criteria encouraged people to stay home if their symptoms were mild. If you have mild symptoms, are without chronic disease, and not feeling super sick, stay home, said somebody named Gov Guam. I don't know that guy, but anyhow, I'm not going to go off on that rant just yet. Now the government is expanding the criteria for testing. The new guideline is, quote, if you have any Wuhan virus symptoms, you must get tested right away. Additional testing could have been ramped up over 2 weeks or more before making an assessment that Guam's Wuhan virus cases have flattened. So in other words, in order to say the curve has flattened, you got to do more tests. Early optimism can be as risky as refusing thousands of test kits from the same manufacturer that Federal Emergency Management Agency has been ordering from South Korea. You remember that when it was presented to Governor Lou Leon Guerrero that she could order these, that Northern Mariana Islands had ordered them, and that we could order the same thing. Governor Leon Guerrero said, I'm not going to do that, and it's a dead issue. Not a very good choice of words in this environment, is it? The last thing we need to talk about is a dead issue. All right. Part of the reason why the numbers have flattened may have to do in part with the fewer testing and the previously restrictive criteria. And then there's a list of numbers which I'll not I'll not read, but the end of the editorial said, optimism is a good thing, but it has to include all factors before success can be proclaimed. I got to take just a second to grab my blue pencil here. Headset broke. There we go. Bear with me for a second, folks. My headset broke. Break time?
No, sir. I was just playing some music while you fixed your headset.
Oh, thank you very much.
You're so rough with all your equipment in there, sir.
My bad. I'll try to be more careful, Real Joe Cruz. Yeah, I got off to kind of a bad start. I didn't unpack my coveted blue pencil and my copy of the Constitution. And then I caused my headset to disintegrate. Good thing I've got a wide-awake producer over there who played a little music while I was getting my stuff together. So, as far as this editorial is concerned, it says what's needed to be said, and it rates the coveted blue star. We don't give the blue star by default, but this editorial definitely rates one. So here it is. A blue star goes to the Post. And that takes the Post up to 192 blue stars, PDN 57. Okay, so we move from there to the card, and this is what I've got on the card for today. I suppose that's Martinez's call here. Before I get into it, I guess I had to put that on my schedule. First Demi Cotney, then Martinez, and then the card.
How did you know?
Good afternoon, Martinez.
Good afternoon, Senator. Another legislative question. You know, people that watch the legislature, I think a lot of them didn't know this until 334 and 335 because they really watch it now, especially since they're home. But what's very frustrating, it's been going on for years, is they recess all the time. Can we take a 1-minute break and it's a 20-minute recess? And it's very frustrating. The MIS guys in the computer, you know, that they re-show the legislative sessions at night. Sometimes we make it late. They should edit that and just make it straight. But, you know, we know why they take recess. There's an amendment or a senator needs legal opinion. But what would you do to shorten the recesses almost where you wouldn't have any? Being a legal counsel and a senator, what would you recommend?
That's a tough one, Mark, because, you know, when I was a senator, one of the hardest questions that I had to deal with whenever the legislature was in session was trying to figure out what time the 10 o'clock session would start. Because it certainly wouldn't start at 10 o'clock. And we have a caller, a regular caller here named Jimmy, who posed me this question about a week ago. He said, "What do second grade students have in common with the legislature?" I didn't know, and he said, "Well, the answer is they both love recess." So I don't know, Mark, if there's. I think that really depends on the strength of the leadership of the speaker, because the speaker has the ability to call the legislature back into session. And if it's, someone asks for a 1 minute recess, at 1 minute, the speaker calls the members back. In a sense, though, being the speaker and trying to be a leader is kind of like trying to herd cats, because the speaker has to both set a direction and prod the other members to follow. But if the speaker prods too hard, I was about to say she, but I'm going to correct myself. If the speaker prods too hard, they may have a rebellion on their hands. So I'd say the only answer to that question, Martinez, is that we need a firm speaker who wants to keep the process moving.
How about this, Senator? They know what the bill is beforehand. Type up all of your amendments and submit it at the session. And, of course, you can have amendment to the amendment, but those are the only amendments you can make, and that will smooth it up. And then amendments to the amendments sometimes may only be in one word or a few words. How about something like that? All of your amendments must be in writing, submitted before you start second reading on the bill. What do you think of something like that?
Well, that's a thought, but, there is a tactical dimension in bringing forward amendments. If a senator is well prepared, he may have a couple of amendments that he never uses because he won't need them, or he may have an amendment or two that he would use in order to overcome objections that he hadn't seen before the debate started. So there is some reason for some spontaneity when it comes to amending bills on the floor.
Okay, just wanted to get your opinion. Thank you.
You're welcome, Martinez.
Sure.
Okay, so start out with Demi Cottney, then Martinez, and then from there we go to the card. I wonder whatever happened to... Wonder whatever happened to another Joe. Another Joe used to call in during the Demi Cottney. Are you out there, another Joe?
Probably cabin fever, sir.
Could be. Okay, so here's the card. First item on the card is McNinch versus which Leon Guerrero? And it's not the witch that has the pointed hat and rides a broomstick either. It's the other witch. And as I'm talking about that item on the card, I'm reminded that yesterday a couple of people posted items on Facebook referring to Leon Guerrero, the two Leon Guerreros, right, the two popes, as the War of Roses. They wanted to refer to that little scuffle as the War of Roses. Well, I thought about it a little bit. A rose is a beautiful flower. And I thought a little bit about the flower, and then I thought about the plant upon which the rose grows. And I thought in this case, instead of calling Leon Guerrero versus Leon Guerrero the War of Roses, the War of the Roses, it might be more appropriate to call it the War of the Thorns. All right. And then the next item on the card after McNinch versus which Leon Guerrero is Commissar de Norcy versus Positives. And then I have a rarity on the card called Bob versus Bob. Yeah. It's so as though things tend to pair up. Leon Guerrero versus Leon Guerrero, Bob versus Bob. So you want to make sure you hang around for that one. And then I've got Mansfield versus Fernandez, GRMC versus GMH, and a couple holdovers from yesterday, Sedfree versus Leon Guerrero, and MSN, Michael San Nicolas versus Shimizu. So I'm going to start out here with McNinch versus which Leon Guerrero. And just bring you up to date here. There was a story in today's Daily News about Judge Gatewood denying Governor Ken Leon Guerrero's application for a TRO, which we covered pretty thoroughly yesterday. But if anybody wants to go back and talk a little bit more about that, it's a complicated subject. We can do that. We will be addressing the matter again probably early next week, because my suspicion is that Ken Leon Guerrero's lawyers will move the court for a preliminary injunction. So there would be a hearing on the preliminary injunction, which has a different cast than an application for a TRO. TROs are supposed to freeze the facts pending a hearing on the merits. Applications for TROs only address the merits from the standpoint that the court must decide that the petitioner has a reasonable chance of success on the merits. But the TRO doesn't go to the merits. A hearing on a preliminary injunction will go to the merits. Okay, so there's a column in today's Post by Ron McNinch, and he says the headline, which of course is not Ron McNinch, is the headline, "Anyone with basic knowledge of Guam roads could avoid roadblocks." Well, that's true. I do it every day. And as helpful and open and forthcoming as I am, I'm not going to tell you how I do it. It's kind of like when they first, when they first rebuilt Hamburger Highway, they paved it. It had been just one pothole after another, but after they paved it, it was good for about 2 days until everybody figured out, hey, you can take Hamburger Highway from Tamuning to Dedido, and then it became so crowded that it was actually faster to go the long way. So this is what McNinch says. I'm going to skip over some of the introductory material, but he says, in the last week, a lawsuit was filed against Governor Leon Guerrero. The plaintiff is quacking. Yeah. Now, when I see something like that, the plaintiff is quacking, I'm wondering, is the plaintiff a duck? Or if the plaintiff is not a duck, in what context do we usually use the word quack? And the answer is doctors. So I'm thinking, quacking, was it a doctor that filed suit here? The plaintiff is quacking about the roadside warnings that are being given every day on our roads. Roadside warnings. I haven't seen any roadside warnings at all. A roadside warning would be something like a large sign beside the road that said something like, "Repent, the end is near." That would be a roadside warning. But what I am aware of are the checkpoints, which I often refer to as choke points, that are not roadside, but actually right on the road. And they're more than just warnings. And then the column goes on to say, in my opinion, the lawsuit is nonsense. Wow. That would make good basis for a motion to dismiss. With all due respect, Your Honor, this lawsuit is nonsense. Oh, okay. Do you move to dismiss? Yeah. A motion granted. Lawsuit is nonsense. There you go. Then it goes on to say, among other things, it tries to claim that these roadside warnings are a form of search and seizure and a number of other things. Well, let me just stop here and apply a little bit of my knowledge of this book right here. And I've mentioned this before, but I guess I haven't mentioned it enough, or maybe I didn't talk loud enough. But in article, as it were, the Fourth Amendment, I'm just going to read the pertinent parts here. The Fourth Amendment said, the right of the people to be secure in their persons against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated. So we're not talking about a search. Nobody says that anybody gets searched at the choke points. But we are talking about a seizure. And the law of seizure is that when an official, usually a cop, stops you, even momentarily, it is a seizure. Now, I'll just digress for a moment and talk a little bit about a case called Terry versus Ohio, which is an extremely important search and seizure case. That was decided back in the 60s during the Chief Justice Earl Warren criminal procedure revolution. But even then, Terry upheld the Constitution of a short seizure. And it goes like this. A policeman relying on his knowledge and experience who thinks he may be in the presence of someone, that a crime might be afoot, and that he's in the presence of someone who might be armed, a cop can stop that guy and pat him down for weapons. The cop can run his hands over the clothing of that person to determine whether or not he's got a weapon. No weapon, away he goes. Now, if in the process the cop touches something else that he recognizes, like maybe an ice pipe or something like that, then you get into a search and whether or not the search is legal. But that's momentary seizure, no probable cause, perhaps reasonable suspicion, and that's all. Has withstood constitutional muster. It's called Terry versus Ohio. That goes all the way back to the 60s. And as I said, this was a product of the Warren Court. This is not a defense-oriented decision. So a momentary stop by an official clothed in the authority to make the stop is a seizure. So when you've got the sawhorses and everything out on the highway and you have no choice but to drive in there and you're stopped for... we had a doctor tell us on her way to GRMC, she was stopped at the East Agania checkpoint for an hour and 40 minutes. That is a seizure. There's just no getting around it. The only thing to argue about is it a reasonable seizure? So in Ken's case, where he alleges an unconstitutional seizure, you can't just blow it off and say, this is how the sentence reads, roadside warnings. Among other things, it tries to claim that those roadside warnings are a form of search and seizure and a number of other things. So if you were to imagine the setting that this column describes, a roadside warning, a sign beside the road, right? So if somebody filed suit and said, yeah, that sign beside the road is a seizure, that would be silly, but that isn't what happened. That's not what's happening. Well, they've closed it down for now, but they'll start it up again at 1800. That's exactly what's happening. There is a seizure, hundreds of seizures every day. Okay, let's take a short break here, and I'll come back to McNinch versus Leon Guerrero.
With 50 years of experience on Guam, you can count on us during times like this. You, our customers, are the priority, and we want to assure you that our bankers are there for you. Our call centers are available, and our online services are functioning efficiently. We also want you to have the confidence that you can bank with us virtually anytime, anywhere. If you would like to enroll for online and mobile banking, go to fhb.com/enroll. At First Hawaiian Bank, it all starts with yes. Member FDIC.
Horizon Properties can empathize with individual property owners during this trying time. The last thing you should worry about is collecting rent or sending a repairman to your property. With their web-hosted property management system, Horizon can reach out to tenants, vendors, and owners alike and maintain the current prohibition requirements. Let Horizon Properties take care of it all. Help flatten the curve by remaining safe at home. Call 646-7616 or 777-7792 or visit HorizonPropertiesGuam.com. Horizon Properties, always there for you.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Security Title, providing solutions for complex real estate transactions.
Now, more Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie. Spitting truth like watermelon seeds at a summer picnic. Call now, 888-TALK, 888-8255.
It didn't take me as long this time. By the end of the program, I'll probably be able to do it in about 10 seconds if I keep breaking it every 15 minutes.
I'll see if I can find another pair, sir.
Thank you,
I'll do my best.
Thank you, Real Joe Cruz. All right, so where was I here? Yeah, we're talking about seizures. So what goes on those roadside warnings? What goes on in those choke points is definitely a seizure in the Fourth Amendment sense. There shall be no unreasonable seizures. So it is a seizure. The question is it reasonable? And I think that it is unreasonable, and I've gone through it at some length before to demonstrate why I think it's unreasonable. But anyhow, it's there. And then McNinch goes on to say, oddly, the plaintiff demands a jury trial. It will be ironic if there is a Wuhan virus outbreak on the jury that is dealing with the Wuhan virus question. Well, did I tell? Let's get out the Law and Order notebooks, Real Joe Cruz. And we know from watching Law and Order that before a juryman is impaneled, he's voir dired. And the chances of anybody who had a connection with the Wuhan virus getting on this jury, which is never going to happen, but I'll get to that in a minute, it's just not going to happen. That's not the way the jury system works. And then McNinch goes on to say it will be ironic if there is a coronavirus outbreak on the jury. Then he goes on to say, in my opinion, no jury on Guam with common sense. Yeah, well, juries don't always have common sense. Ask Marcia Clark. No jury on Guam with common sense would agree with the various claims this silly lawsuit. Well, juries don't have to agree with claims. Juries find facts. Judges determine whether or not a claim, a claim, cause of action, whatever, is capable of state, or whether it states a claim upon which relief can be granted. Those things are sorted out by the judge, not by the jury. Now, as far as a jury is concerned, this is a suit for preliminary and permanent injunctions. And injunctions are not legal proceedings, they're equitable proceedings. So a little legal history here. Once upon a time in England where we got all of this stuff, there were law courts, there were common law courts, and there were chancellors in equity. Chancellors in equity were clergy. But we merged law and equity in the United States around the turn of the last century, But the two categories still survive. So when someone goes into court with a petition for an injunction, he's invoking the equity jurisdiction of the court. All equity matters are tried to the court, not to the jury. Juries only find facts in law matters. So if there are any legal facts to be found in these cases, that would be a jury question. But as a general principle, that never happens, that the equitable issues are sufficient to render a decision. So chances are a jury won't even be impaneled. Interesting question as to why the petitioners decided to make a demand for a jury trial, but you don't have to get into that just now. Then McNinch goes on to say, the reason I think this silly lawsuit will fail is that every person on a potential jury will know that people should have been at home during the Easter weekend and limit their daily contacts. Well, that is if the jury has anything to say about it. Also, anyone with basic knowledge of Guam roads could avoid these warning sites. Yeah, it's the same thing with First Amendment litigation. You know, if you say something that's inflammatory and you're called to task on it, all you got to do is just shut your mouth. I mean, no one has. Everyone should understand that these rights that are set out in the Bill of Rights. The way not to have any problem with these asserting these rights is just don't assert them, and then you'll never have a problem. So, and that's also anyone with basic knowledge of Guam roads could avoid these warning sites. Well, I don't want to see, first of all, they're not warning sites, they're choke points. And as one of my posters pointed out, you know, liberty is lost in dribs and drabs. You don't lose it all at one time. But if the government thinks that they could stop you on the highway for no reason, no reasonable cause, and hold you up for an hour, that just emboldens those who think that the power of the government should be able to stomp on any of these rights, including not just the Fourth Amendment's protection against unreasonable seizures. Then he goes on to say, McNinch goes on to say, if Leon Guerrero's efforts worked, we will not have a major spike in cases in the next 2 or so weeks. Now, which Leon Guerrero is he talking about? There's Governor Leon Guerrero, and there's Ken Leon Guerrero, and that's why I listed this on the card as McNinch versus which Leon Guerrero? Because if Ken's efforts worked and there are no more checkpoints, then according to McNinch, we'll not have a major spike in cases in the next 2 or so weeks. I would think that if we don't have a major spike in the next 2 or so weeks, it would be because of the efforts of the Governor Leon Guerrero. But what do I know? And he goes on to say, we do have a whole bunch of if we have a whole bunch of newly infected around the 1st of May, this means that nothing is foolproof. Fools are often very ingenious and not very bright. This whole paragraph is a little difficult to decode. If we have a whole bunch of newly infected around the 1st of May, this means that nothing is foolproof, including the measures that Governor Leon Guerrero put in place. And then he says, fools are often very ingenious and not very bright. So is he saying Governor Leon Guerrero is very ingenious but not very bright? That sounds like the kind of thing I'd say, Real Joe Cruz. I didn't say it, but as I have said in earlier columns, this virus is deadly to people over 45 and people with chronic illnesses. I think there is an anecdotal evidence that smoking may be a factor. Yeah, and that's it. So That's McNinch versus which Leon Guerrero. So that's the end of that item on the card. Next item on the card is Commissar DeNorcy versus people who test positive for the Wuhan virus. And there's a story in the Post called Light at the End of the Tunnel. And again, it talks about flattening the curve and talks about the mayor of Dido and others going out and doing a survey, finding people who ought to be tested. They'll be doing testing at Estumbo Elementary, I think. Let's see here. Yeah, the Estumbo Gym. Department of Public Health and Social Services Director Linda DeNorcy said there will be drive-through and walk-up areas at the Estumbo Gym. The testing will target individuals who have barriers to care and may be sick at their homes. In other words, poor folks who don't get to see a doctor regularly, etc. So they're going to test these folks at the Estumbo Gym. Now, here's the real key. When they find people who are positive, when they test positive, this is what's going to happen. This is a quote from Commissar DeNorcy. We want to make sure there is no cross-contamination. We want to control the transmission of this disease. And by doing so, we will assess if they have a condition in their home that's suitable for all of them to live in. If it's not suitable, meaning they may have an elderly in that household with that positive patient, or another family member that's also with comorbid conditions, we don't want all of you in that house. Okay, so what she's saying is that if there's a person who tests positive for the virus, what Linda DeNorcy's, let's see, if she's the commissar, I guess her army will go out and investigate the house in which that positive testee lives. Okay, I'm going to come back to this right after the break. I've got our Carl on the line, so after the break we'll do our Carl, and then we'll come back to Commissar DeNorcy.
One of the easiest ways to prevent the spread of COVID-19 is to wash your hands with soap and water for at least 20 seconds. Let this message help you time it. Start soaping up now. The virus can survive in the air for 3 hours, on copper for 4 hours, on cardboard for 24 hours, and on plastic and stainless steel for 72 hours. Disinfect phones and common household surfaces like tables, doorknobs, light switches, countertops, toilets, faucets, and sinks, desks, including computer keyboards and kids' toys. Choice Broadcasting reminds you to stay safe and stay clean. You can rinse now.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at GuamTraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Horizon Properties. Call 646-7616 or 777-7792. You can also visit them at horizonpropertiesguam.com.
Yeah, I like that song, as it always reminds me of the exotic places that I've visited in my lifetime, Real Joe Cruz.
Yes, sir.
I've been in some really exotic places. I've been to India.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
I've been to Indonesia.
All right.
Yeah. I've even been to Indiana.
Whoa.
Yeah.
That's something exotic.
Yeah, and how about Indianapolis, Indiana?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, every time you play Back Home Again in Indiana, it brings back memories. Thank you, sir. All right, so we got our Carl on the line. Good afternoon, our Carl.
Hey, good afternoon, Bob. Enjoy listening to your show as usual. This talk about massive testing being the key, I somewhat disagree with that. And one reason is that suppose someone is tested today and they become exposed tomorrow. And I think it's within the first 4 days that the person has been infected becomes very infectious, and then later on it starts to taper off. I think the only way through this, to get over it, is to plow through it, and that is herd immunity. It's to protect the most, the people who are most
vulnerable.
Yeah, that's the word I'm searching for. Yeah, the most vulnerable, and the rest need to get out and become exposed. From what I've read, the over 600 sailors who were found to have the virus initially on the USS Theodore Roosevelt, 60% of them, over 60%, were asymptomatic. They had no symptoms. So I think this virus is probably more widespread than we think, and that's actually a good thing, because the only way through this is to, as far as I'm concerned, is herd immunity. You mentioned the figure 80%. I saw in a video I was watching about this, the figure 95%, somewhere in that neighborhood. But until we get exposure and recovery up to those figures, it's going to keep.
I heard 60%, Carl. That when 60% of the people have had the virus, you're on the threshold of herd immunity.
Yeah, and that may be the figure. Maybe it varies depending on the type of illness. I don't know, but I think it's wishful thinking that we're going to get over this any other way. If we, through all our efforts and all our mask wearing and hand washing and all the things we've done, staying home week after week, suppose we 70% of the population was escaped. I doubt that's true, but suppose that's true. How many people would it take to start a second wave? One person. That's all it would take. I watched a very good short video from the YouTube channel Crossroads with the investigative reporter Joshua Phillip. He had gained access to documents from communist China showing that in the Hunan province, the virus is back. They're trying to hide this, but it is coming back, and it's back with a vengeance. So I think we're kidding ourselves to think we're gonna. There's another way other than to go through it. The vast majority of people will get it and recover fine. There are people who are vulnerable that we really need to be concerned about protecting the best we can, come up with measures to do that. But the rest of us need to go on, and work and become infected and recover. And that's the only way I see. I don't know what your thought is on the matter.
I think we're pretty close together on that, Carl. And I started talking about herd immunity a couple of weeks ago. I think it was something that Dr. Tom Poole brought up as an important factor in epidemiology, herd immunity. But it's kind of like, a child who's raised in a sterile home is not going to be a healthy child as he grows older, because he's not going to be exposed to the kinds of things that causes him to develop the immunities that we all have. The history of exploration and colonization, when Europeans came to South America and brought their European diseases with them, it was the most deadly weapon that they had, far more deadly than swords and muskets. So the kind of the way of the world before we ever heard of the Wuhan virus, before we ever even cared about the Wuhan virus, was that people would be exposed to these pathogens. Some would die, some would develop immunities, and as time went on, the pathogen would be less and less a threat. There have been exceptions, of course, like smallpox, which was eradicated because we found the vaccine. Polio, same thing. But the other side of the question, Carl, is how badly are we hurting ourselves by the shelter-in-place lockdown? Even those who survive the Wuhan virus, which will be 98% of the people that are here right now, are going to have a really rough time. Some people will have their lives ruined. They'll have lost their businesses. They'll have lost their jobs, their savings, on and on and on. And it kind of gets me back to my criticism of Amanda Shelton, who said, with respect to the curfew, well, the curfews would have been good. If they saved just one life, it would have been worth it. That kind of calculation never gets you anywhere. People are going to die, and people are going to, and that's very predictable. And we have very little control over it, but shooting ourselves in our economic foot with an automatic weapon is probably going to be more injurious than the Wuhan virus.
Yes, and I've heard that each year, on average, 20 to over 60,000 Americans die from flu every year, year in and year out. And there's not a peep about it. And we're still under the worst figure right now. The one thing that complicates it is how our elected officials have set things up so that a fair chunk of the laborers, the workers, really have no sense of urgency to get back to work because they're getting paid. The people in the private sector, they're getting absolutely crushed by bills, so that they're getting absolutely smashed by this. But a portion has no real urgency because things are pretty good.
Actually, the opposite of urgency, because government of Guam employees never had it financially so good. You get paid your regular pay for staying home. If you go to work, you get double pay. And then in addition to the double pay, you get a 10%, 15%, or 25% bonus, depending on what you're doing. And then, as Real Joe Cruz pointed out, if you work after 6 o'clock, you get another 10%. Some folks will be drawing overtime at time and a half, so there'll be some huge GovGuam paychecks coming out of this. The smallest paychecks will be just regular pay for that grand effort of staying home. Whereas Joe Sixpack, is out trying as hard as he can to work, probably had his hours cut, and is probably just keeping one nostril just barely above water, one financial nostril just barely above water.
And as you mentioned, there's 3 times more private sector workers than there are GovGuam workers. So there's a massive number of people who are suffering tremendously from this. And a lot of their jobs, when they come back, there's no guarantee they'll even be there. These businesses, many of them, may be permanently shuttered. I mean, they'll close for good.
True enough, Carl. Well, we got a break for the big halftime show, so thanks for calling.
Thank you.
And I've got another Joe hanging on, so another Joe will get to you right after the cannon fire, which is not going to be aimed at you, by the way.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
There'll be a comeback in the fall. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. The director of the Centers for Disease Control clarifying remarks he'd made earlier about a possible resurgence of the coronavirus this autumn.
I didn't say that this was going to be worse. I said it was going to be more complicated or more difficult and potentially complicated because we'll have flu and coronavirus circulating at the same time.
Dr. Robert Redfield was misquoted, according to President Trump, who says he prefers to be optimistic.
We never want this to happen again, what happened. And if it should come back in some form, we want to snuff it out very quickly before anything can happen. And I personally hope it doesn't come back in the fall as a combination of the flu or not as a combination of the flu.
The U.S. has now surpassed 842,000 coronavirus infections and more than 46,700 deaths have been blamed on the virus. An outbreak of severe weather in the South has killed at least 2 people in Oklahoma and damaged homes and buildings in Oklahoma and in Texas. The National Weather Service says there have been at least 21 tornadoes in the South. Tornado watches and warnings now extending into parts of Louisiana. It's signed the president's latest executive order.
President Trump on Wednesday signed his promised executive order temporarily suspending immigration to the U.S. during the coronavirus pandemic.
This will ensure that unemployed Americans of all backgrounds will be first in line for jobs as our economy reopens.
The president said immigration would be suspended for at least 60 days in order to make sure Americans laid off during the pandemic are first in line for new jobs. The 60-day pause will apply to green card awardees who are currently overseas.
Fox's John Decker. Asian stock markets closing Thursday, mostly higher but lower in China. Dow futures are up nearly 100 points. Crude oil futures are trading slightly higher. America is listening to Fox News.
Horizon Properties can empathize with individual property owners during this trying time. The last thing you should worry about is collecting rent or sending a repairman to your property. With their web-hosted property management system, Horizon can reach out to tenants, vendors, and owners alike and maintain the current prohibition requirements. Let Horizon Properties take care of it all. Help flatten the curve by remaining safe at home. Call 646-7616 or 777-7792 or visit HorizonPropertiesGuam.com. Horizon Properties, always there for you.
As we stand up to coronavirus by standing back with social distancing, Bank Pacific reminds you that you can come to the bank without going to the bank. Use many of our other delivery platforms like online banking at bankpacific.com, accessing cash at our ATMs, shopping with our debit cards. For businesses, we have secure cash and check drop windows, and we are employing a new smarter mobile app with remote deposit capture in the next few weeks. We're all in this together, and together we will win. Bank Pacific. Where others put branches, we place roots. Member FDIC.
California and Texas among the states loosening restrictions to resume elective surgeries soon. That will mean thousands of healthcare workers will be back on their jobs. Layoffs are coming, though, for an institution that's been instrumental in providing important coronavirus statistics.
The coronavirus map from Johns Hopkins University has been put into overdrive by media members, counting on it as a steady source on numbers of people impacted by COVID-19. But the university's president says they're losing $100 million by the end of June and that they've been losing money ever since they decided to end on-campus instruction and elective medical procedures. So they're cutting salaries and laying off workers as a cost-cutting effort. Will any of this have an effect on the school's data gathering and research on COVID-19? A university spokesman says there will be no effect on our pandemic efforts. Jill Nato, Fox News.
The New York Times reports U.S. intelligence officials say China is spreading misinformation about the virus by sending text messages to Americans, as well as boosting social media posts aimed at sowing fear and promoting lockdown protests. Republican Congressman Mike McCall of the House Foreign Affairs Committee tells Fox News at Night the Chinese Communist Party has been using social media to spread lies like accusing the U.S. military of creating the virus.
We're waiting for their response. We've been working with them to try to take down this content that's just an outright lie coming out of the Chinese Communist Party. We will hopefully be getting a report card as early as next week on their ability to stop this.
Representative McCall says he's spoken to several social media companies, including Facebook and Twitter, to combat it. Some social media companies say they'll begin including information about where posts originate geographically to help users assess their validity. I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
During this time of great uncertainty, Security Title is working to support our essential banks. We are working for the family who would have been homeless if their purchase was delayed, for the family's refinancing to lower mortgage payments, for the contractor who has fronted the cost to build a home, and the surveyors, appraisers, inspectors, and the realtors who cannot make a living without selling a house. With our office doors locked and our essential team members complying with all government protocols, in our own small way, Security Title continues to serve our community.
One of the easiest ways to prevent the spread of COVID-19 is to wash your hands with soap and water for at least 20 seconds. Let this message help you time it. Start soaping up now. Disinfecting high-touch surfaces daily is key to preventing the spread of viruses. Use solutions with at least 70% alcohol. Some disinfectant brands that have products that meet the EPA's criteria for use against the coronavirus include Clorox, Ecolab, Kimberly-Clark, Lysol, Purell, and SC Johnson. Choice Broadcasting reminds you to stay safe and stay clean. You can rinse now.
Cocoa Coffee Company is now available at Circle K. Single-origin coffee beans carefully sourced and locally roasted to give you the freshest cup of coffee Guam has to offer. Grab a cup that's brewed every 30 minutes or purchase a bag of the locally roasted whole beans. Flavors now serving: light medium roasted Ethiopia and medium dark roasted Jamaican Blue Mountain. Exclusively available at Circle K. With every Cocoa Coffee Company purchase, a portion of the proceeds will go towards the Cocoa Recovery Program.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific. Banking on the Pacific for 65 years. Welcome back to Tall Tales. I believe Bob is fixing his headgear again. Did you break it again, Bob?
That's funny. All right, here we go. Back on the air again with my third equipment failure of the day. We're going to have to talk about that at the end of the program, Real Joe Cruz.
Yes, sir.
All right, so where was I? I've got another Joe on the line. Hello, another Joe.
Hey, Uncle Bob. I think we're not getting enough background information, revisiting our education. I think this goes back to my high school years. We're learning about antibodies and viruses and what's the best way to obtain these antibodies so that we can have a resistance protection in our immune system. I think they're coming up with all kinds of theories, and then they're revisiting those theories because they're not sure if, as your previous caller said, if they're being reinfected. Then the questions would be: is it the same strain or a mutated strain? Is it what they want to call Wuhan COVID 19.1A?
If you refer to it as COVID-19, it won't know that you're talking to it. You got to call it Wuhan virus, otherwise it won't pay any attention to you. Another Joe.
I called it by its full name, Wuhan COVID. But I added the 1.A or 0.1A because of course you can always add one or 2B and 3B or 3C, whatever. So I don't know how many strains there are. I don't know how many times it's mutated. What is their rationale for saying that you can be reinfected? Is it similar to what the theory that once you get shingles as you get older because you've had chickenpox when you were younger? That I've heard this. I don't know if you've ever heard that before.
That's very true, Real Joe Cruz. And if you're an old guy like me, you want to go down there and get those shingles vaccines, because chickenpox is bad, but shingles is horrible. But it's a little different, because with shingles, the virus actually stays in your nerve system. It lives in your nerve system, but you're asymptomatic for 40 or 50 or 60 years until it pops back out. But what we're talking about here with the Wuhan virus, your immune system finally catches up with it and annihilates it. But then later on, when you're exposed to it, your immune system can't knock it out the second time around. So it's a little different than chickenpox.
So there has to be alternative treatments depending on the vulnerability of the individual. Then,
well, we're not sure if people who have had it and overcome it, if every one of them is every one of them can possibly catch it again. We don't know. We don't know enough about this thing to really deal with it as well as we could.
I agree with you, Uncle Bob, and that's why I hesitate to say, let's go forward with the herd theory vaccination. I kind of want to know what other options are in place, just in case some of the individuals of the herd take a turn for the worse. I don't want to say, oh well.
I don't think there are an abundance of alternatives, Real Joe. Another Joe. This is one of those things where a government leader is really put to the test, because people who think, oh yeah, I'd like to be governor, because if I were governor, I'd always do the right thing. I'd always make the right decision. And unfortunately, when you're in these positions, oftentimes you're not given a choice between a good decision and a bad decision. You're given a choice between two bad decisions, and you have to choose the one that's not as bad as the other. So right now, the longer we stay in lockdown, the better chance we have of beating the virus. But something else is going to get us too. So there aren't any really good alternatives.
Well, I would say allow the people to share, trade notes, so to speak, and at least feel as though we are well informed as much as possible. That's pretty much what I'm hoping for. Here I'm throwing out these terms again in the election cycle: hope and pray, and of course Bononco, and I'm not sure if I'm forgetting any. Is that all? Does that cover all of them? Or?
Well, as far as keeping the people informed, we have a real advantage here as far as keeping the people informed. As long as Tall Tales is on the air, people can keep informed. All they got to do is tune in at 4 o'clock every afternoon and listen to Tall Tales for 2 hours, and they will be informed. I suppose there are a few out there that don't know that, but that's your job, another Joe.
And I'll also leave one last thought, Bob. Karumarak and Karumpika. It's right and true. Thanks, Bob. Appreciate it.
All right. Yeah. Well, the absolute cure for everything is Kadu. All right, Real Joe Cruz?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that was another Joe. So I've been peeking out of the Facebook here out of the corner of my eye. So let me see what I got here. I got James Adkins, who says woohoo. I wonder if he means Wuhan. Yeah. Now, I learned something the other day down at the protest. This James Adkins is not James Adkins.
Yeah, he's the son of Big
James.
Jim.
Yeah, there are two James Adkins.
Yes, just like there's two Lee Webbers.
Yeah, right. Thank God there's only one Bob Klitzkie.
Thank the Lord.
Yeah, one is bad enough. Okay, and then we've got Rico Blancaflor, who signed in, and Andrew, who says, can Queen Victoria Lou keep us in crisis mode indefinitely? Unfortunately, Andrew, I think we're about to find out. And then we have someone who calls herself Dudusju. Yeah. So no, Hafa Dudusju? Hafa tatat manu Wahoo si Bob ti Andy Ju. Lo Dudus how. All right, that's the first time that Dudus Ju has been on Facebook here. I suppose she's just come on board to see if she could flirt with somebody, right? All right, then we got Vivian Fernandez Decimito and Richard Leone, Walter Gray, Andrew again, Genghis Lou. All these historical has decreed you are in lockdown until December 2030. Wow. Ishmael says, I have a fence. It's always closed. Anyone who enters my property uninvited is trespassing. If you are a peace officer and do not have a warrant to cross my property, then you are trespassing. You weren't invited. As an American citizen, I see more. There's a link here that is not working very well for me. Yeah, as an American citizen, I'm protected by the Constitution. Well, just a short correction here. The American Constitution protects everybody. You don't find the word citizen until you get up into the 14th Amendment. Other than that, it's person. No person shall be deprived of life, liberty, not no citizen, right? So the Constitution protects people. As a human being, I have the inalienable right to utilize deadly force in self-defense and in defense of others. I am protected by, let's see here. By the Constitution, as a human being, I have an inalienable right to utilize deadly force in self-defense and in defense of others. I am protected by the Castle Doctrine, stand your ground. And I don't care who you are, I don't care what you want. If you're looking to take anyone out of my household, I can tell you that you won't get far. But I must warn you that besides the above-mentioned rights, what I do have are a very particular set of skills. Skills I have acquired over a very long career. Skills that make me a nightmare for people like Lou. If you drop, drop this buffoonery now, that will be the end of it. I will not look for you. I will not pursue you. But if you don't, I will look for you and I will find you. And you will, like Sho Kosugi once said, pray for death. Be careful there. Be careful, Ishmael. You know.
I think he's quoting a movie.
Oh, okay.
Sounds like he lives on deadly ground.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
He's out for justice, probably.
All right.
He's hard to kill.
Yeah, okay.
Above the law, maybe.
I got it. I get it. I'm catching on. I don't watch, you know, the newest movie I've watched in a long time is Casablanca.
Oh, yeah. I love watching those older films. And in fact, I prefer to watch those older films when I'm watching TV.
My favorite is Sands of Iwo Jima, of course. Yeah, okay. And I just want to make one comment here about Castle Doctrine. You know, the Castle Doctrine has extended has made it so that you don't have a duty to repeat if you're at your job or in your car. Other than that, it hasn't really changed the law of self-defense. But when you are using force to defend yourself or defend others, that force should always be used because of fear and never because of anger. Just a little side note there. Okay, Richard Leone must be the Pari Connections and Familiar Name Politricks Handbook. Oh, I missed Ken Brown. Ken Brown, I was on Guam in 68 and 69. Does anyone remember Mr. and Mrs. Rink, who lived out by the beach? He walks with a limp and is probably about 80 years old and worked out at Anderson Air Force Base. I don't remember the Rinks. No. I guess Ken is trying hard to find the rinks, though. I remember the Dadido roller rink back in those times, but no, that's not what he's after. And I've got Gus Chisangas, half a day. Guahantatlo. I guess Gus is probably down in Brownsville right now, part of our mainland listening audience. And Ishmael Velez, the talented Joe Cruz, able to ride anything from a bow-legged mule to a Ferris wheel. Good for the real Joe Cruz. And Kevin Brown says, hi, Kenny. Richard V. Leone. Where's any comments coming from all the elite scholars or the Guam politicals or whoever? Well, we did have a comment from a scholar, Ron McNinch. Andrew Camacho, well, he was the subject of the card. Andrew Camacho, the Daily News fails to impress. So often in Bob's Meet the Press. How can it go far without the blue star? It plods along, though, nonetheless. Thank you, Andrew. Richard Leone, it pays not to have any local relatives. Richard Leone, fewer tests mean greater GovGuam bola. Yeah, that's something that should be inserted at the end of every press conference. A legend that says none of this was bola. Gus Desanga, stay away from still people, still broke, still borrowing, still complaining about the same situation, still hating, still running from the same man, woman, still insecure, still childish, still lying, still cheating, still stuck on stupid, still ain't going to change, still and always will be a headache. Now, I can't resist this. How about still the one? Yeah, no, I guess the Carl is not listening, or he'd be on the phone if the Carl were listening, right? He's still the one. Antonio Sablon, fixing the tests. Andrew Camacho, a new executive order, road shedding. There will be 47 checkpoints at various locations, moving around every 15 minutes. Andrew, Bob's headset is the latest victim of the Wuhan virus. That's probably what did it. And Maspahaki, John Palau, Leite. Ha, ha, ha. Okay. And let's see. Should there be a Bola party pledge for the 160,000 Americans? That's Richard Leone, Andrew Camacho, Game of Thrones, Frenchie, good afternoon, Judge, and Real Joe Cruz. Frenchie, with all the bobbing, we are going to get seasick. Paul Zanoni, take a bob. Jose Martinez, that column is like a frog in a slowly heating water, oblivious of the impending doom and chastising those who don't appreciate a nice jacuzzi. Oh, that's an interesting comment, Jose. Richard V. Leone, is Runny McNinch subliminally saying there's a Chamorro constipation or constitution? Jose Martinez, tyranny doesn't come in one huge swoop of the law. It existed and comes to power through whittling of civil liberties, bit by bit, certainly. And Frenchie, sounds like McNinch is virtue signaling. Let me clutch at my pearls here. I'm clutching at my imaginary pearls. Let me see if I can adjust the camera there. Yeah, here I am, clutching at my pearls. Okay. Jose Martinez exists. Lynn McAfee, I haven't had a single GPD official stop me as yet. And it's always been National Guard members. Does that change the seizure? Not a drop. You know, I think I was careful to say official. And if it's a government official with the apparent authority to stop you, it doesn't have to be a cop. Jose, as you were, Joey Tovis, emergencies have always been the pretext upon which safeguards of individual liberty have ended. And that's a quote from Frederick Hayek. If you haven't read Frederick Hayek's Socialism, The Road to Serfdom, highly recommended. Jose Martinez, conspiracy time. The massive testing piling program is a phishing program. Because positive numbers have become low, they need a justified checkpoint, shutdown ban on non-essential purchases, etc. So they got to get the numbers up if we're going to keep stopping folks out on the road. Randy Landis, I don't think so, as they have essentially been deputized. Okay, going back to the guardsmen. Ishmael Velez, a practitioner of martial arts, Governor Kim Jong-lu, holds a black sash in Kung Fu. Like David Carradine, she tackles any adventure and will swift kick she takes on the with a swift kick she takes on the legislature. With an elbow strike, front kick, and back fist too. And down goes Ken, winner Kim Jong-lu. But Ken's just playing possum. Time's on his side, waiting for the right moment to turn the tide. Now the governor is distracted not by a man, but by her mortal enemy, the Wuhan clan. The invisible enemy is declared by Talina Nelson, one of 3 senators. Who else in? None other than the drunken monkey, a.k.a. Speaker, and Amanda, the Kung Fu Panda, as a pleasure seeker. But will Ken dare strike, for he is outnumbered, fighting against those who our taxes have plundered? But the time is now, Ken, give her 1-2 and knock down the throne, Queen Kim Jong-lu. Boy, that guy, very good. Okay, 7th inning stretch. We'll come back to Frenchie the Frenchman. All right.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at GuamTraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts. Brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
Wow, nice smile. So perfect and all.
Thanks.
Thanks. I owe it all to Dr. Robert Yang and his Smile team. They do wonders for a healthy, happy mouth.
Got teeth? Don't wait until they hurt. Schedule your routine checkup and cleaning with Dr. Yang and his Smile team. Suite 119 in the East West Business Center, Upper Tumon. Call 647-8702 or 3.
The best thing that happened to teeth since toothpaste.
Dr. Yang and his Smile team.
They make smiles happen.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Horizon Properties. Call 646-7616 or 777-7792. You can also visit them at horizonpropertiesguam.com.
Okay, so seventh inning stretch, Wrigley Field, Chicago, and we're back in Tall Tales country, and I've got Frenchie on the line. Before I get to Frenchie, though, there's one comment I want to read here from Facebook. Romeo Carlos, whether quoting a movie or not, the language used in the comment is covered under federal law and could be used against them as cause for arrest and prosecution. People need to get their ish together. You cannot make threats, implicit or otherwise, against public officials on social media in particular or the internet in general. Bad move. I would suggest the administrator remove that comment. Toot sweet. Okay, I'll do that while I'm talking with Frenchie. Good afternoon, Frenchie.
Good afternoon, Bob. Don't break any more things, right? My grandmother would have said you're just like a German panther in a China store, you know?
A German panther?
Panzer.
Oh, Panzer. Well, you know, I don't know if you knew this or not, Frenchie, but the Marine Corps mascot is a bulldog.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is that at the Battle of Belleau Wood, the Germans were heard to say that the Marines fought like Teufelhunden.
That's right.
Devil dogs.
Devil dogs, yeah. Correct. So, you know, the last 2 days I kind of held on talking about the medias in this crisis, but I think today is a good time to do it. You know, we have a tendency to see journalists are kind of knights in shining armor, but they are far from that. You know, I mean, what's ironic is that the Washington Post changed their motto to "Democracy dies in darkness."
Right.
But this is exactly what the media has been doing for several years, and we as American citizens have always been sold that kind of urban legend about our media that you know they are above and they go above and beyond their job, and they're some kind of a force estate which guarantees our rights versus the administration. But and of course Hollywood has played a big part in that. You know, I don't know if you like the old Western movies from the 40s and the 50s, but
I love them.
You always, you know, you always had the local newspaper editor risking life and limb to confront the local bullies or the corrupt cattle barons, you know, and that's what a lot of people saw journalists like, you know. Of course, in Hollywood, you had a lot of movies regarding journalists, you know, from Girl Friday in the 40s, and with Cary Grant and Rosalind Russell. That should make you feel a little younger now, and. Hess in the Hole with Kirk Douglas, The Sweet Smell of Success with those two huge stars of the time, Tony Curtis and Burt Lancaster. Then, of course, in the 70s, you had All the President's Men. You know, I think it was Redford and Hoffman, right? which was the dramatization of the Watergate scandal. And, of course, the journalists are portrayed as the saviors of democracy in this case. And you also had, on the same year, you had Network with Peter Finch and Faye Dunaway. And all the time, journalists are the heroes, and it's very unusual in Hollywood when they are not portrayed as such, except maybe for Citizen Kane from Orson Welles. But unfortunately, I think it was in 1941, so it was just before the war. And then after the war, people kind of overlooked that great movie, which was a criticism of the Hearst family and how they use media to their own benefits. And, of course, after that, in World War II, the press was censored by the government. So there was government control. And then during the Cold War, even though it was more benign, there was still control of the government. And we only had three major TV networks, ABC, CBS, NBC. So at the time it was kind of easy to control things. And and in the 50s, 60s, 70s, the American media always portrayed themselves as being a beacon of democracy. Now, of course, they always compare themselves to the Pravda in the Soviet Union, or even the fallen propagandists like Goebbels of the National Arbeitssozialistpartei. And, this was an easy thing to do. And they also gave an impression of impartiality. If you remember the 70s and the 80s, most anchors, even though most of them were left-leaning, they made an effort to keep appearances of fairness, of neutrality, even if it was not the case. They always gave the impression of, they were the carrier of the truth, of the news. You had famous anchors like Walter Cronkite, every night he used to finish his show by telling us, and that's the way it is. That was truth coming down from heaven.
Right.
And he had that big booming voice. He was kind of impressive. When you're a young person, you're listening to something like that. It's, wow, this guy is amazing, But after the Berlin Wall fell, then you had the 24-hour news cycle. It changed a lot. A lot of things changed, and there was a purchase of a lot of the medias by billionaires. The Post is owned by Jeff Bezos, right? You see Bloomberg has his own network of things, and he's not afraid to fire journalists and threaten their spouse when he doesn't like a story about something. This is the kind of atmosphere you have now. So you have the joke now that you have only two kinds of journalists, the prostitutes and the ones on welfare, because they don't have a job.
Right.
So it has changed a lot. So for us on Guam, we have kind of a ripple effect from all that thing, because PNC, KUAM, PDN are basically all apologists for the governor. They're controlled by CBS, Gannett News, USA Today. Of course, the Post is a little bit moderate and a little more aggressive in their criticism of the governor, but not by much. So what do we have left? We don't have much. I already said that. If you look at the press conferences of the governor since the beginning of this crisis, the local journalists only ask soft questions. They never ask hard questions, And the morning shows, what's her name that runs opposite to Ray's in the morning, her sister and herself were campaigning for Lou during the election year. And, when Lou wants to have an interview, she calls her in the morning. And, of course, it's all those soft questions. There is nobody asking the hard question, why didn't you have any tests? Why do suddenly we have enough tests to test thousands of people? We don't know. It's all very vague. And if it was not for this talk show or Raise in the Morning or Candid News or the Guam blog, you would have a lot of, there would be a huge vacuum. There is basically almost a communist type of information thing when you only have one sound of the bell. You don't hear all the sounds of the bell. You only use one. And so today, when you read the thing from McNich, I mean, McNich, which is supposed to be the least left-leaning voice of reason at UOG, ends up being a useful idiot by trying to put lipstick on a pig. It's still a pig. You know, if he doesn't understand law, then maybe he should go and ask a lawyer before he starts writing a column like this. It's just plain stupid. So we end up having to fight for our souls, our liberties, our own rights, and because of the crisis, our economical well-being, because a lot of people are being impacted with this. Because nobody in the government and no journalists are asking them how they're going to put the island back in business. Because tourists take 6 to 8 months to come back to a place that had trouble. We've seen that with the North Korean crisis when Kim Jong-un was threatening to bomb us. We didn't see a Japanese customer for almost 8 months. Then they slowly came back. But in the meantime, even if we reopen tomorrow, the only people that are going to spend money on Guam are the people living on Guam. And if they don't have a job, they don't have money to spend. And if the government doesn't release the funds that has been sent by the feds for that purpose, then we are in for a very hard time. And nobody in the media except Romeo and Candid News and things like that are asking questions. Now, of course, those people are never invited at the press conference because they don't want to talk about it, right?
Yeah.
So we are in a lose-lose situation regarding the media here on Guam.
I just add one, I agree with everything you said, Frenchie. I'd add one more thing, and that is the Andrew Breitbart theory that those folks in the mainstream media are more interested in hobnobbing with the elites, going to the right cocktail parties, and making friends with the elites, one, and then two, having good relationships with government officials so they don't get cut off from government news, so they don't ask the hard questions.
That's correct. Well, Breitbart was absolutely correct. Actually, there is a meme going around right now about all the people in the Obama administrations that are married to journalists.
Yeah.
It's pretty scary when you see the level of influence those people have and that incestuous relationship with so-called free journalists who actually are peddling the party's line. And we've seen it with the relation with President Trump. President Trump is not a beacon of diplomacy, but there is no respect. The way they ask him questions is just amazing. Can you imagine if a local journalist was asked a question to Little Lou the way they talk to Trump? I mean, she would have a nervous breakdown right there. We would have it would be terrible. So you're absolutely right. And don't forget, in our own administration, she has former journalists that ran hit piece against people that Lou's campaign thought were dangerous for her campaign. And they were rewarded with good jobs.
Don't you think that was just?
Well-paid jobs.
Don't you think that was just a coincidence, Frenchie?
Oh, I think we cannot talk about it because I think it's a personal matter.
You're right on that one.
Yeah. But so I think we need to keep on pushing. We have shown that when people start pushing back with the social media, the politicians have a tendency to listen a little bit. But at Adelup, they are kind of living behind their walls there, and they're run by a bunch of Keystone cops, and I don't see any improvement anytime soon. You know, the media right now is going from scaring everybody to stay home, scaring everybody to not take the roads, to telling us everything is hanky-dory. So I don't know where they're going to go, and then there is that very incestuous commission on restarting the economy, which is, we have a guy on there, Babauta, which is one of the only officials fired by Obama.
And that took some doing.
Yeah. That took a lot of doing, and he's the principal political advisor to the governor. Why is no journalist ever asking that question? Why did you choose this man who obviously is not a beacon of integrity? No, there is no transparency. The only thing we get is virtue signaling, which is exactly what Ron McNich did there. I guess he needed to have some little brownie points with the administration. I don't know. We'll see. Time will tell.
Well, Frenchie, as usual, your call was extremely interesting and very educational. So I really thank you for giving us that quick history update on the media.
Well, yeah. Well, at least we did a little trip back in the 40s and 50s, so you could feel a lot younger then.
I need that every day. Thank you, Frenchie.
You have a good afternoon, and I hope Joe can repair all the broken things.
Okay, thank you, Frenchie. So long. Yeah, going back all the way back to the 50s, I remember the Chicago Tribune was delivered to my hometown, and I remember seeing the Chicago Tribune that said Dewey defeats Truman.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Kind of showed you what they thought ought to happen, right? Okay, so we're going to be heading down the home stretch here in a minute.
GRMC's cardiology department treats most complex heart problems. In our catheterization lab, cardiologists use imaging equipment to treat clogged arteries that can cause heart attacks or heart failure. We perform balloon angioplasty, stenting, and other life-saving cardiac procedures. If you suffer from a heart condition, have your provider refer you to GRMC's cardiology clinic at 645-5500. GRMC, where patients are partners.
Hafide, this is Kayla from APL Guam. Here at APL, our expertise and extensive network can help you grow your business and reach out to more markets. As a responsible carrier, APL is also committed to a sustainable future, whether it's protecting the environment or investing our efforts in giving back to the community. Our dedicated team in Guam and the U.S. mainland are here to support you. Call 588-4651 or visit apl.com.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific. Banking on the Pacific for 65 years.
Here we are, home stretch, Churchill Downs, Louisville, Kentucky, heading down the home stretch. Hey, Real Joe Cruz, can you call Ray and ask if he can put me on for another half hour?
Oh, yeah.
I've got Jimmy and our Carl on the line. I'm going to need it.
Okay, sir.
All right, so good afternoon, our Carl.
Hey, Bob. I'll just make this short so that Jimmy can get on. I don't think he's been on the Ferris wheel so far.
He has not stepped foot on the Ferris wheel today.
All right. Well, I want to give him his chance. Yeah, I just wanted to add my 2 bits to all that Frenchie said, which is always a lot. I mean, it's like I look on Frenchie's calls like the fancy French dessert at the end of the show. So I always look forward to that. He always has interesting things to say. But I just wanted to comment about why there's this trend in journalism. We see it in history, with Howard Zinn's history textbook, A People's History of America, which has sold over 2 million copies. Howard Zinn has openly stated he's not interested in teaching history. He wants to change the world.
Yep.
Yeah, so that it's no longer a matter of teaching history, it's teaching revised history to reach a certain agenda. And this is true with journalism, and it's true with the law, too. But believe it or not, I'm sure you've seen evidence of that this has actually infected the legal profession in the law schools. And that there's this desire through this tentacles of neo-Marxism that have crept into academia, I believe starting in the 30s and on through the 40s and 50s. And there's this drive to progress, they're called progressives, to progress toward this utopian vision. They see the world as fundamentally unfair and unjust, and their mission is to change the world, as Howard Zinn said. It isn't to provide the facts as a normal journalist would, or to teach accurate history as a historian would,
or to decide constitutional questions like a Supreme Court would.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's in especially in the humanities and the social sciences, what they call the soft sciences. It's really become like a mind virus that has crept in there, and this is poured into the minds of the students, and they come out little missionaries, little pursuing this utopian vision of a socially just world. And a lot of what we see today, we don't think neo-Marxism maybe is affecting us. It affects us every single hour of every single day. With PC, the politically correct culture, the identity politics, the identitarianism, and on and on.
And the whole separatist movement, Carl, is a classic example of neo-Marxism.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. It's come to Guam, and it's at work here with the Gramsciites going into our institutions, in politics, in the schools. It's here. It's not coming. It's here already. So, if anyone wonders why that is, there's been a change over time. That's it. This evangelical zeal that has, because progressivism is like a secular religion, and they believe in punishing the people who don't follow the orthodoxy, So that is what is it's going on. I'm sure you agree, and you've commented something like that. But I just wanted to add my 2 bits about that. Thank you. I'll let Jimmy carry on.
All right. So it was a pleasure, Carl. See you tomorrow.
Thank you.
All right. And next we have the one, the only, the man, the myth, the legend. It's Jimmy.
Who are you talking about? Yeah.
That's you,
okay,
Jimmy.
I got one comment and one joke and one question.
All right.
I'll leave the joke to last because you probably cut me off.
All right.
But, okay, the comment about journalism, they say if it doesn't make them mad, sad, or glad, it's a failure.
True enough. And that's the way I feel about the editorials,
Make them mad, sad, or glad.
Yeah, good enough.
And the question is, Frenchy mentioned a couple of, I guess, independent websites, and one of them was Romeo's blog, and I didn't have the pen and paper. But how do I access that? What's the URL?
You just type in Guam blog and Guam blog, and autocorrect will take you to the right website.
Oh, Google search, whatever.
Yeah.
But what was the other one?
Say again?
That one he mentioned 2 places. The other one I never heard of before.
Maybe Candid News?
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah. Same thing. CandidNews.com. Yep. So
Google search?
Candid with a K.
Oh, okay. That makes a difference.
Mm-hmm.
Candid News.
Yeah.
NoFace.com.
Candid News. Yeah, and
could you please spell that?
K-A-N-D-I-T. K-A-N-D-I-T. Candid is the Chamorro word for light. Candid.
It sounds like C-A-N-D-I-D.
Yeah, so,
Candid, as in opening.
Yeah. So
K-A-N-D-I-T.
If it's dark, you say, Baba Fanny Candid, open the light.
That's not what I say.
Oh, okay.
But, anyway, this is a joke now. Yesterday we was talking about directions. And I heard my grandpa give directions one time. He said, okay, you want to go to Kansas? Just go straight ahead. You want to go to Nebraska? Go straight ahead and turn right. You want to go to Oklahoma? Go straight ahead and turn left. You want to go to hell? Turn around and go back to Illinois.
Yeah, that's that Missouri sense of humor.
No, that comes from my grandpa.
That's great, Jimmy. I'm going to copy that. I'll attribute it, but that's a great joke. Yeah.
Jimmy's grandpa.
Jimmy's grandpa. Okay. Thanks for calling, Jimmy. You're always a treat. You're always welcome on Tall Tales. Thanks again.
Okay.
All right. Yeah. You want to go to hell? Turn around and go back to Illinois.
Jimmy had one heck of a pappy, didn't he?
Yeah, he did. Yeah. Back there in Missouri. Yeah. All right. Well, I just got a few minutes here. So let me finish up with some of the Facebook comments. I'll come back to Commissar DeNorsi tomorrow and finish that up. Got a lot of interesting stuff on the card, but I'll wait till tomorrow. Rudy Magallanes, did the governor do a coronavirus update today? And did DeNorsi apologize or take back what she said? Yes and no. And David Mays, Adeloop needs to show the public the data gathered that shows how effective the checkpoints have been at stopping the spread. They can't. And, you know, I mentioned this yesterday. I sent a FOIA to the governor asking what the average, you know, all of the records that they kept that showed the average time it took to get through the East Agania checkpoint. Well, they don't have any records. They aren't even keeping track of what they're doing with these checkpoints. And then we got Pam Duvall, who says, those were the days. Tim Burrell agrees, and Lynn McAfee. There is at least a study done, one in Stanford University, that a large percentage of people already have antibodies and never had symptoms or had mild symptoms, thinking it was the flu and recovered. So the percent of positive people is actually higher. This is good because that means the actual death rate is drastically lower percent of those infected. It's bad because the media and official will use the increase in cases to say we are surging and need further lockdowns. Good point. And Pam Duvall says the best entertainment. Well, that's the object here in Tall Tales. You know, we not only want to be informative, but we also want to keep you interested and entertained. Otherwise, you wouldn't come back, right, Pam? Romeo Carlos talks about a Noam Chomsky book, Manufacturing Consent. Pam Duvall, Governor Lou gives, I think, and I don't know, too much as her answers. It's probably the best she can do. And even the first one, I think, if I were a lawyer and she were testifying, I'd say that assumes a fact, not an evidence. Okay, so we've wrapped up another beautiful day here on Tall Tales. The real Joe Cruz and I don't like Fridays because it means 2 days without Tall Tales. But we'll be back tomorrow with bells on at 1600. We'll see you then.
The Point is KUSG.